Hi, I'm Robin Carey, and it's my distinct pleasure to be talking today to Bob Libbey, who's head of digital and social for Pfizer, one of the world's largest pharmaceutical companies. And Bob, I also am so grateful that you joined us last year for Social Shakeup, and I wanted to follow up on some of the conversations that we've had there. I want to talk a little bit about what you're seeing. I mean, you've been in communications a long time. What are you seeing that is happening with social that's shaking up all of our preconceived notions about the way that companies talk to their constituents?
Sure, thanks, Robin. I think that one of the things that we're seeing clearly is that the efforts between those who create content and those who deliver it are drawing closer and closer together. And so, 30 years ago when I started as a print reporter, I almost never saw the guys who worked in the press room, sadly, because the press room's a great place. But, we might bump into each other in the parking lot at the end of a shift. But nowadays, and this has been increasing in recent years, and I expect it to continue to, the folks who, from the content side and the delivery side, are drawing, as I said, closer and closer. And I think ultimately, the ideal communicator might very well be one who can create content as an editorialist, but also create or come with a distribution network and put the two together, because that's certainly the trend, as I see it now.
Oh, totally. But companies also have their own distribution networks,
Sure.
So how is that shaping the thinking at Pfizer? Does Pfizer feel, as many companies do now, that they are, in addition to making some of the most bleeding edge healthcare solutions, if I can use that word, in addition to that, they're now media companies as well. Is that a thought that's taking hold?
Yeah, I mean, Pfizer is an awfully big company and completely committed to developing innovative therapies to help improve people's lives, and that's what we're about. We're a science company and committed to innovation. But there is discussion, and you will hear it about companies becoming content creators, becoming publishers, and I think of what we do as working in a content shop, and we deliver our content with advanced technology off of advanced platforms. But I think there's a danger in getting distracted from what the mission of the business is. And our mission is clear at Pfizer, and everything that we do is measured against that. We put it through that litmus paper of, how are we contributing? How are we helping to advance the business? There's no room in any business today for not contributing as directly as possible. And, frankly, in an area like social, where it's really evolving quickly, and it's going to evolve so much more, how exactly you do that isn't as clear as we would probably like it on a given day, and especially in a heavily regulated industry such as ours.
But you have a listening platform, so part of what
Sure.
your strategy involves. Can you tell me a little bit about how that, and to what degree is that being measured, and is the listening something that's being made operational throughout the company?
Yeah, we've only just created our own listening platform, and prior to that it was done on more of a third-party ad hoc basis, issues-driven, I guess you would say. And our commitment obviously is larger now, and the intent is primarily to understand, what our audiences are saying, and to see how they're reacting to the issues of the day, the issues around our business and so on, and how we can best use that is certainly going to become clearer in the coming months and years. I mean, all of this work is so dynamic. And so to come in one day and have that platform, it's almost like putting something up online, unless you're giving $10 million away, it takes time to get traction. It takes time to understand it. It takes time to get a feel for it. And that's where we are right now with that. We do measure a lot.
What are typically some of your measurements?
Our measurements are largely now around reach, and usage and so on. And what we're focusing on increasingly is where we're focusing our efforts increasingly, and that's in the area of engagement.
How do you define engagement at Pfizer? Yeah, I mean, I've heard like a million definitions,
Sure, I don't know if we define it so differently than how others define it. It's, it's being in a conversation, it's being in something that's two-way. And, one of the interesting challenges in really engaging, and everyone talks about it, is if it's such a simple thing, like you and I sitting here, which, by the way, is social communication.
Yeah.
It's all social.
Absolutely.
What we're talking about is just faster and accelerates, at such greater rates. But to really engage with folks on social platforms demands a lot of resources. It's a very, very time-intensive work. And so, it's easy to talk about it. It's easy to try to figure out how to do it, but actually doing it and staffing for that is a really big challenge, and this is important.
Let me pick up on that a little
Sure.
bit, because as you so graciously invited me to moderate a panel yesterday at Social Media Week on the subject
Sure.
of scaling social. How are you scaling at Pfizer? I know your department's growing, but how do you determine what you're going to do in-house versus partnering with some of your partners? I mean, how do you do that?
Well, we're doing just that. We're looking at opportunities to build out. We're not, just to be clear, growing as a department. Our efforts are growing. The number of platforms we work on and work from are growing. But the issue of scaling goes to questions about audiences and market distinctions and specifics. And we're early in the evolution of that. And that, like a lot of what we're working on, is going to become clearer. Down the road. It's not clear right now. I mean, that's the short answer, the best way to scale these things. I think there are a lot of things around this form of communication that can be misleading, I think. So, for
Such
example,
as?
scaling.
Yeah.
Because the technology certainly allows for it. And so on Facebook, on our corporate Facebook page, we have lots of users from all around the world. But the question might be, could we engage with users in different parts of the world better with more targeted pages? Only time will tell, but that's more resource too.
That takes a certain amount of listening and measurement as well.
I mean, the perfect example is, putting together a brochure or a news release.
Right.
And, you do it and it's out, and then you handle the calls that come back. When you put something up online on a social platform and you want to engage with people, when do you stop that? Never.
Let me talk to you about some of the challenges too. So we certainly, outside of regulated industries, are seeing an increasing amount of cooperation between communications and marketing. Right? Because ultimately everybody's out there telling stories in the same places, and even if they're not in the same places or they're in different geographies, because it's by definition global, an internet conversation is going to be seen wherever it's going to be seen. Is it particularly hard in the regulated industries for marketing and communications to come together? I mean, there are just even more reasons to silo those functions than there are outside.
I don't think so. I think that I think it might actually be the opposite. I think that because we are bound by many of the same restrictions, by all the same restrictions, really, we have more in common than folks might expect or might have in other industries and
That makes sense. Yeah.
other businesses. Figuring out how to make the most of our ability to work together, that remains to be seen. And certainly the work that we do is mostly informational. It's certainly not product specific.
Right.
It's not at that level. It's at the corporate level. And but we're certainly looking at how we could do that. And we do talk with our folks our fellow communicators and some of the marketing folks in the business units. I expect that will increase.
So getting back to this scale thing again, you're on a number of platforms. Sure. We talked a little bit about this during your panel yesterday, but so many brands are challenged because they're being sold all the time, this sort of bright, shiny object, this new particular technology, this new particular tool, this new particular platform. How do you look at that incredible chaos and determine where to focus your resources and efforts?
That's a great question, and it's a real issue for a lot of people, Robin. I think that, I know what we do, and I think what's important in this is, looking at what you're trying to achieve with your communications or marketing vis-a-vis your business objectives, in getting clear on the content that you need to deliver, and then figuring out, which implement, which tool, which wheelbarrow, I think of them as sometimes, do you need to put that content in to deliver it in the best way, so that the tech considerations almost are last, as opposed to, where often you'll hear people say, geez, we ought to be on Pinterest, or we ought to be on Instagram, and okay, well, that's fine if you're a visual business and you've already thought this through and you've thought everything through, and finally you're deciding on the delivery mechanism. But oftentimes you hear people start there, and it's just a matter of understanding. I think, the more we work with folks and they get to understand what it is, what we do, and how we do it, they have a tendency to put the technology piece back where it more appropriately belongs, which is, certainly later in the conversation. I
So
think.
story is the most important thing still.
It's content. I mean, it is. I mean, it's content and connecting, and you can't do it without the technology. So I'm not minimizing the importance of that at all, but it can be a distraction, and it is what people who don't do this every day tend to latch on to. It's what they hear about. It's what they see at home. It's what they see on TV. Gee, wouldn't that be great? It's not unlike 15 years ago, 20 years ago, if you had your own video production facility, people call you up and say, we need a video, and you'd say, why? And they say, well, they couldn't really even explain why they needed a video. They just liked the idea of video. That's okay, I understand. That's why we call it the bright, shiny object. You have to really be careful not to get hypnotized by it.
Well, thanks for doing this video today.
Thank you. I've enjoyed it. Thanks, Robin.
It's really been a great time. Thank you.
Thank you.